Hello, this is Amber Rain Davis, and welcome to my YouTube channel and blog at notableinc.com. Today I'm sharing a card that I created for Altenew's April 2018 blog hop. We'll be using their new stamp and die set called Strength Blooms, and also their gradient stripe stamp set. I'm using the Mini Blossom die cutting machine from Altenew today. I typically don't do a lot of masking for scenes because I find it somewhat tedious to fussy cut out the masks, but the Mini Blossom die cutting machine and the die cuts that come with this bundle were really helpful to create masks quickly and efficiently. What I've done is stacked a couple pieces of full sticky post-it note and die cut 2 masks at a time for that. I did the large flower and the small flower. And as long as you are placing your masks well, the space that you typically see around a die cut once you cut the image is not a problem. The shape is close enough that it's going to work just great. So what you'll see is I'll leave just a small edge of the image hanging outside of the mask so that once I go to stamp my next image, there's a small overlap and it's not going to leave a white space in between the 2 stamped images. And you'll see that once we start to take the masks off. I'll do that with the leaves as well, so you'll get to see that a couple times during this video. I'm using the Tonic Studios Tim Holtz stamp platform here. I made 2 cards in this pair of cards with the Strength Blooms stamp set. And with the first one that I did, I hand stamped the images, and I found that to be difficult to look through the block to make sure that I had them lined up correctly. So I switched over to the stamp platform for this. Any stamp positioner could work. I do find that it's a more efficient process because you're able to stamp more than 1 flower at a time, which is really helpful. This is also particularly helpful if you're going to mass produce any kind of cards. The stamp layering set, the Strength Bloom set, has 4 layers, so the amount of detail in these stamps is just incredible. You'll see when we add the last layer, which is the darkest layer, how it really makes the flowers pop with the amount of contrast that's added. Really beautiful stamp set. I enjoyed working with it so much. So I've gone through and I've added 3 flowers on top and 3 flowers on the bottom, and now I'm going to add some leaves. This will help to fill up any gaps that there were, and I'll also add another pop of color. You're going to see me place the mask down again, and I'm going to leave a small amount of the flower exposed so that when we go to stamp our leaves, the green ink will overlap the flower images and it won't leave a white gap in between the flower and the leaf. It'll translate into a seamless appearance. If you put your mask all the way up to the edge of the ink, then what you're going to find when you pull your mask up is you may see a white space in between those 2. It's actually not a bad look. I kind of like that look. However, it wasn't what I was going for this particular project. So you'll see as I take these off, there's no space in between that leaf and the flower. So I'm going to go through and continue to add more leaves. Once I have all the leaves added, I'm going to add my sentiment. So you're seeing me with the embossing buddy, which is just a powder tool. I'm putting that all over the ink in case it wasn't quite dry yet. And I'm using the large happy stamp from the gradient stripe stamp set. This is a nice bold happy all caps stamp, and it's going to fill the center of the card there. The ink I'm using is VersaFine Black Onyx ink. And then I'm going to add a sub-sentiment here. This is the birthday stamp. You're seeing me just get that lined up using the grid that's on the stamp platform. Once I get these 2 stamped with the VersaFine Black Onyx ink, I'm going to clear heat emboss it. I absolutely love this particular ink because I think it gives a really crisp beautiful sentiment. My only issue with it, and it's a totally personal thing for me, is that I tend to smear it all over the place. So it actually takes a longer amount of time to dry because it is a pigment ink. The pigment sits on the surface of the paper. So one of the things that I will do is I may either heat set it with my heat tool. More often than not, though, you're going to see me clear heat emboss it. That will add a nice raised effect to the sentiment, and it also eliminates the need for me to wait a long period of time to get that ink to dry, because like I said, I generally will smear it all over the card. The second card actually that I did for this series, I did end up smearing the ink through the center of the card there, and I ended up cutting out the middle and adding an acetate piece in between. You'll see that at the very end of this video, a picture of that card. So I generally have to get creative when I smear the ink all over the place, and that's how I accomplished that with this particular card set. So I've let my heat tool heat up to eliminate as much warping of the cardstock as possible. It does help to heat from the front and back of the card, and to keep your heat tool moving, not to keep it in one place for a particularly long period of time. You will see once it's good and heated that the letters will start to turn a dark black as that embossing powder melts. That never gets old. So now that we have that clear heat emboss, no smearing can occur. Here we're adding a little bit of shimmer and shine with a glitter pen. This is the Wink of Stella clear glitter pen. So I'm adding it to the leaves, and then I'm also adding it not completely over the whole flower, but to the darkest parts of the flower. Just adds a bit of shimmer to help those flowers pop even more. I felt like the flowers needed a drop shadow and something to lift it off the page, give it some definition. So I'm using some Copic markers to add a shadow. I used the warm grays with W1, 3, and 5 to add the shadow. I'm going to pop the panel up with a fun foam, piece of fun foam. This is adhesive fun foam. I tend to use a color that coordinates with the card so that when you're looking at the card from the side, it just adds an extra little pop of color. I do like the adhesive fun foam because it eliminates the need for me to use liquid adhesive. So I generally will add Scor-Tape to one side and use the adhesive foam on the other side. I sometimes do use the liquid adhesive, although I am kind of messy with it, so I tend to stay with the dry adhesives when possible. Now we're going to embellish with some clear droplets. I'm using Ranger's Glossy Accents in order to adhere these. It's a really nice clear adhesive, and it also goes through the mail really nicely because it's nice and strong. I am actually going to take these droplets off. After taking a second look at the card, I'm going to do a few more things. So you can see it here. I just felt, you can see the shine of the Wink of Stella, and I just felt like there was too much white space on the side of the sentiment. So you're going to see in the picture of the finished card here that I stamped 4 more flowers and die cut them, and then popped up 2, and I changed the placement of those clear droplets just to add a little more interest. I also did some Copic coloring on those leaves. This is the other card that I was speaking of where I had gotten black ink on the middle of the card, and so I cut the card out, put some acetate in between those 2 panels, top and bottom, and put the sentiment on the inside, and I thought that turned out nicely. At that point, I was so invested in the card that I didn't want to start over, so I had to get creative on how to make that work. Before I fussy cut out the top and bottom panels, I backed it with another piece of white cardstock so that I could have a piece that would go on the inside of the acetate. I hope that you've enjoyed today's card. Please be sure to watch the other videos in my blog post for Altenew's April 2018 blog hop, and also continue on to the next person on the list. It's been an absolutely fantastic release, and there's so many great products to take a look at. If you have enjoyed this video today, please remember to subscribe both to my YouTube channel and my blog. Have a great day, and thanks so much for stopping by.